Businesses are, by and large, very efficient in their cash management and thus can account for only a small share of total currency in circulation. A couple of studies back in the 1990s estimated that seed cash in retail establishments, example in cash registers, is less than 2% of all outstanding cash, with perhaps another few percent in transit to banks at any one time. Given the huge trend of decline in cash used for medium and large retail transactions over the past 20 years, this share can only have declined. Perhaps surprisingly, bank vault cash, even including cash in ATMs, does not explain much of the surprisingly large currency holdings either. First of all, the amount of vault cash just isn't that big compared to the overall money supply. As of mid-February 2016, U.S. currency in bank vaults and ATMs combined was $75 billion, which equals about 5% of reported currency in circulation. However, out of this $75 billion, $61 billion is treated as required reserves and doesn't even count in the currency in circulation figures used in Chapter 3. How much currency do consumers hold? So if a significant share of reported currency in circulation is being used in the legal economy, it is not in cash registers or bank vaults. One has to look to consumers' pockets and cookie jars. Most of what is known about consumer cash holdings in the legal economy comes from surveys that have been conducted by central banks in recent years, using sophisticated techniques but fairly small samples. The basic takeaway from these studies is that the cash consumers admit to holding can account for perhaps 5 to 10% of the total currency supply. We begin with the United States and then look at Europe and Canada. The United States. The two important sources of data on U.S. consumer cash holdings are the Survey of Consumer Payment Choice and the Diary of Consumer Payment Choice. The first is an annual survey conducted by the Federal Reserve that makes use of the Rand Corporation's Panel of American Life survey respondents. The second is a consumer diary project where consumers are asked to keep diaries, something akin to the Nielsen diaries for rating TV shows. It gives a more detailed snapshot of consumer holdings of cash, but so far only for the month of October 2012. Nevertheless, the diary snapshot is especially valuable because in addition to answering questions on total currency held on person, example wallet, pocket, and purse, and on property, example home and car, respondents were also asked the denominations of the notes they held. Of course, there are well-known problems with both survey and diary methods, but in any event, these are the best sources available. Both approaches, the annual survey and more detailed one-time diary snapshot, find that consumers admit to holding only a modest fraction of total cash outstanding, certainly neither the $4,200 per individual counting all denominations, nor the $3,400 per individual counting only $100 bills. In the 2012 annual survey, for example, respondents reported holding an average of $46 on person, outliers omitted, with a median of 25. The one-time October 2012 diary respondents reported a slightly higher average amount on person, $56, median 22. Total cash holdings reported, including on property, were $250. The annual surveys, which attempt to follow a relatively constant and uniform group, have the advantage of allowing one to look at trends. The results show that in parallel to total currency in circulation, there is an upward trend to reported cash holdings and a strong increase since the financial crisis of 2008. Average reported total holdings, on person and around the house, rose by $100 from 2008 to 2012, but then fell by $20 in 2013, the most recent year available. Thus, the order of magnitude for consumer cash holdings is roughly 6 to 7% of total currency in circulation, or 12 to 14% of currency estimated to be held domestically, presumably mostly for legal, tax-compliant, regulation-compliant activities. These numbers become somewhat higher if one includes outliers from the survey.